Yesterday, we have talked about the characteristics of well written research proposal. We have talked about how you can able to write down about the different sorts of thesis. Now let us move further and continue to discuss what exactly academic writing requires. If you see very carefully, as in literature, you will find there are many different genres of writing, including poetry, short story writing, or you can say drama, fiction, non-fiction, and even in writing you will find out legal English writing or business writing. Legal writing, the advocates in the court of law that runs. These are different styles of writing, and each style of writing have their own specific characteristics. Similarly, you will find out academic writing is also a particular genre, and with its own distinctive styles, forms of expressions, and vocabulary, it has established itself as one of the most important genre. The skills to write academically needs to be learned, and anyone who wants to improve their academic writing can acquire such types of skills. How should be an academic writing? Academic writing needs to be very clear and precise. Please understand this first fact of academic writing. Academic writing needs to be very clear and precise. In a research context, the student is writing about fairly complex ideas, and these have to be expressed with great precision. Your ideas which are coming out, those ideas should appear on paper, and when it is appearing on paper, you should have a precise language, because it is frequently that one idea follows another when you are start writing about your dissertation, or when you analyze the data, the procedure works in the same fashion. You try to follow logics, and when you try to follow logic to interpret the things, the interpret the data, the logic which you are following in your mind to interpret the data, that logic should appear on the paper also. And if it is reflected on paper, then you can say that your dissertation is giving a clear cut ideas that what you are carrying in your minds. And therefore, friends, we need to understand the very important fact that academic writing tends to proceed very logically and systematically. describing from one process, then explaining how this relates to the next issue, and then describing the second process, and so on and so forth. You have to continue with it. So, good academic writing makes clear the linkages between the different aspects of the subject which is described or analyzed in any way. It requires to follow its own objectives. Please understand that academic writing tends to avoid mentioning the personal feelings or attitudes of the researcher. You need not to mention your feelings. You need not to bring your feelings into it. You need not to bring your attitudes into your writings, because it is, as I said you, it is based on the ideas, the data which you have collected. So emotions, feelings, these do not have any place into academic writing, because the emphasis is normally upon considering the research process in a fairly objective manner. And it is for this reason, my friends, that the traditional approach of academic writing, where you have to use the third person singular form rather than the first person. You cannot mention I, you cannot mention myself, you cannot mention me. You cannot use first person singular form in any kind of academic writing. When you are writing a research proposal, when you are writing a research paper, when you are writing a research thesis, when you are writing a dissertation, you cannot mention all those things into it. That I feel, I think. You cannot use this first person singular form. You have to use the third person singular in your academic writing, in your dissertation, in your research paper. You can use various interpretative approaches to research. The interpretative approach that we are going to study afterwards in the theories from unit number 2 onwards. But when you are dealing with an interpretative research, it is somehow, or most of the time, the student feels that why can't I use my own interpretation about that particular thing? Why can't I use the word I? Why can't I use the word me or myself? First person singular pronoun. Why can't I use this? Academic writing, as I said, prefers to use third person singular pronoun. Similarly, you'll find out if you want to explain what you feel, what you think, what is your interpretation about that particular thing, because it is qualitative research, and here you have to interpret the things based on the texts. That's why most of the time it happens. But if it is a laboratory or if it is a quantitative, then you don't have any chance to say interpret yourself, because the results are in front of you, either in the form of statistics or in the form of the experiment that you have conducted. So here you have to use the word the research or the researcher instead of using I. Instead of using I, you can use the word researcher there. Some reflexive Accounts are often supported to use there. That's what the reflexive account, I say, the researcher, the research, the study, these kinds of words. That's why you will find out, my friend, that in any form of writings, one can say, or one, I'll make it in this way, that one cannot say that there are conventions which are fixed and rigid. You can, there are certain hints and ideas given, they are giving it to you. So when you start writing, when you try to write down something, how to write it, that is a big question in front of most of the students. We have written answers in examinations. We have written essays in examinations, but we haven't conducted a separate research, and how to write for a research is absolutely, somehow I feel it is new for most of us. Most of the students feel it a new style, a new type, and this new type of writing, you are learning it in the first semester of post graduation. And that's why it makes a little bit difficult for most of us. And that's why when you write for academic purpose, even we may have a question in our minds. And when we write an examination, we also write for academic purpose. What is the difference between these two academic writings? Yes, there is a little bit of difference. Although both are academic writings, but there is a difference in this academic writing. What is the difference in this academic writing? In examination, the question is straightforwardly asked to you, that what do you want to say about this? But here nobody is asking you the question. You are creating an argument. You are creating a question. You are posing a question and then answering what the question you have raised by giving supportive documents to your queries, to your arguments, to your questions. And that's why this academic writing needs to be learned very cautiously. When writing a thesis or dissertation, it is normal to include various variety of argument, inferences, deductions, or propositions. I will make it a little bit simple for you to understand. What happens most of the time, we feel that it is difficult what you are saying. You have seen the courtroom proceedings, haven't you seen it in real life? I don't know how many of you have seen it in real life, but if you have seen it in films, and especially those Indian students who have seen Indian films, Bollywood films, you will find out the court scene used to have an argument, and in the arguments they used to put certain, uh, you can say, inferences. They certain used to put certain evidences, and you have to give evidences for your argument to prove your argument is correct. The supporting text you are taking apart from your primary data. Primary data is that particular text on which you have raised certain questions, having certain issues. You want to find out certain things from that particular text, because I'm talking about literature. That's why I'm telling you all those things. That is a primary text you have chosen for that. And to prove the argument that what you are saying, you are taking support of certain secondary arguments, secondary sources. You are not the one who is having this type of questions. Similar kinds of questions have also been asked in this regard. What are those similar kinds of questions? The evidences you have to put into your research paper, you have to put it in your dissertation, you have to put it in your thesis also. And the arguments which you are making, the inferences which you are making, the deductions which you are making, the propositions which you are making, All these may be based on upon the analysis of the relevant literature, what literature you have, or an analysis of data which have been collected, or somehow more rarely you will find out on personal experiences. You have certain personal experiences, and based on those personal experiences, you try to ask certain questions. Now, friends, it is a norm in academic writing. As I said, you have to provide certain justifications by giving evidences. If you give certain evidences, if you give justifications for the things, then what argument you want to proceed, that argument will have some kind of importance or weight with it. Otherwise, a weak argument cannot sustain for a long time. A weak argument cannot be part of your dissertation for a long time. It will die in between. And a typical justification is to point to previous research and to argue that what new assertion you are making in the light of that earlier argument, you are trying to put your justification. Now, variant kinds of justification, variant types of justification can be taken care of. The second resource which I said. In this second resource, you may have research articles, or perhaps writing of a noted authority in the field. Perhaps you may have certain interviews regarding to that conducted by some other person. Somehow you have certain critical texts available on the argument that which you have posed. You are trying to justify your argument by taking support of those critical secondary sources of critical arguments that somebody has raised such type of question, which also leads to reach to your argument that you are putting forth in this dissertation, in this research paper. And the satisfactory justification is solely relied upon the authority which you are using. The authority should be, if the authority is noted one, then nobody is going to question about the authority. If you are talking on romantic poetry and if you take a support of William Wordsworth's quotation, who will ask you, who will argue, who will put, or who will deny, who will decline Wordsworth's contribution towards romantic poetry? Or if you are taking support of Coleridge in an argument that you have posed for romantic poetry and taking support of Coleridge's argument or Eliot's argument, who will raise the question to it? So the evidences, the justifications which you are carrying in your dissertation, the justifications which you are carrying in your research paper, those justifications should have commented or written by certain noted authority, so that what you are saying, so that the questions which arrived, the questions that you have, the arguments which you are giving there, those have certain important references, important queries which have been discussing throughout in one format of literature. And of course, when you try to take support of all this justification, naturally you will reach to a particular conclusion which helps you to develop your conclusion at the end of your research paper, at the end of your dissertation. Please understand this important point, that when you use the arguments, check the arguments you are making and ensure that they are soundly based on logic and evidences. Otherwise, what I said, your argument will die in between. Weak argument cannot survive for a long time. So academic writing tends to be characterized by rather provisional manner in which assertions and claims to truth are made actually. You require to have an evidential basis. You have established your argument with the support of the evidences that you are having with your readings, with your understandings. And there are certain specific phrases that we use when you write a dissertation or thesis. The typical phrases that we use, that the evidence would appear to suggest that, and then you start to write down. Or one might wish to argue that you're going to write in that way. Or if you're having name of some person, Wordsworth claims that, Wordsworth stated that, and then give what they said, quote, in a quote that is called as quote unquote. We have seen most of the time people are using this type of signal in a press conference or in a meeting or in a speech, in a lecture. That is a symbol of quote unquote. You are giving certain evidences. These evidences are not of yours. You are taking support of some noted authorities' words. And this follows a typical ideas you have taken from philosophy of knowledge. Now, academic writing is using specialized vocabulary. And these vocabularies need to understand very carefully. Academic writing employs a great deal of technical vocabulary. And then, friend, it is quite understandable that a thesis or dissertation should contain a number of specialist terms in it. It is always worth reminding ourselves that the argument which we are putting at a primary purpose, what is the primary purpose of any writing? As I said you yesterday also, the primary purpose of any writing is to communicate. You are not known to the people, but with the words you are going to make your own identity. By the words which you are reading, you are going to have creating your own identity amongst the people. And that's why we need to be very careful about using certain terms. You have to use certain specialized term. When you write any dissertation, when you write any research paper, please use the term which is widely accepted for a particular concept. Don't use a term which is not known, which is not familiar, which is not registered amongst most of the scholars. You have to use those terms which are known to most of the people, registered terms. And it is also important to put down that in practice of using complicated terms in hope to make the thesis very strong, sound, impressive, we are using certain jargons which may not be suited there, or which may be suited but not used in that particular context. Please understand, even when you are communicating in English, even when you are talking in English, even when you are writing in English, use such type of words which are easy to understand by other people. That is the basic purpose of any language. Please understand it. Purpose of language is not to miscommunicate. Purpose of language is not to make any sort of misunderstanding in communication. Your language should not become barrier in communication. Your language should become helpful in communication. And that's why if the words which you are using is not, uh, I'm not against anyone, but I'm for giving an example to you. The words used by Shashi Tharoor, okay, it seems to be very good. It shows that you are very brilliant. It shows that you know the language very well. It shows that you have a rich vocabulary with you. But if the person is not able to understand what exactly is the meaning of that particular word, for every word, if you have to go back to the dictionary and refer it, and then once again to find out the meaning of that sentence, it takes a lot of time to understand what you want to say. So instead of using jargons, instead of using heavy technical words, use the words which are already registered with the people, registered with the system, registered with the society to understand the things comfortably. And if we understand, then we will able to find out that how we are going to write down in a very proper manner. Now, understand a very minor thing, my friends. When we don't know about how to start writing in this particular phase, because naturally we have not started writing for research. Even we have not started any kind of research. I don't know how many of you have written research paper, or how many of you have you simply become a part of any seminar, or whether you are a part of some research activity. I don't know how many of you have enrolled for that. But if this is the first time, we are having so many doubts about it. And if those doubts are not cleared in time, then it will be difficult for us to understand that how to move further. And this is what happened with most of the students at the end of semester 3, beginning of semester 4. Most of the students come with a blank mind and blank ideas that, sir, we don't know how to write it. Please tell us how to write it. If you try to understand it, please remember one thing, my friends. When you are starting writing a dissertation, this you think, or you may consider it as one of your exercises for doing for writing of dissertation. That one of the most useful exercise when you are planning to write a thesis is to read any existing thesis in the general area of your research, whatever area you have chosen. And that's why I said, when you are going to visit to the department, in the department library, you will find out MPhil dissertations, PhD dissertations, or some postgraduate dissertations. So before starting how to write down a thesis or dissertation, please refer those earlier theses so that it will be very useful for you to get a clear-cut idea that how to write a dissertation, how to write a thesis. Now, don't even think you get apart from issues about content and subject matter, because you can able to understand, you can able to find out that how these research students have approached both structuring of his argument and writing of the thesis. How he structured those arguments, the arguments which he has placed, the arguments which he has created, and how he mentioned those arguments, how he wrote those arguments. Now, most of the students have divided the chapters or subsections or sections or headings or subheadings. That is not a big deal, but you can able to see that how he divided that chapter, how the chapter is divided into subtitles, subsections. If you feel, you think that there is a requirement of that, you can have a consultation with your supervisor. And consultation with supervisor may help you to find out that what exactly you are going to write down, how you are going to write down. Now, in terms of writing style, you may say, sir, I have my own writing style. Why should I follow a particular writing style? I'm not saying to follow any particular writing style. You cannot follow. Everyone is having his own writing style. You may not have the same writing style that one person is having. It varies from person to person. It is different from person to person. So, writing of a successful, precise, you have a question of precise writing in, I think, in your 10th examination, precise writing. And when you are writing a precise, you need to have a commendable skill of writing it. And for making a thing or converting a thing into precise in your own way, I'm not saying you should have a rich vocabulary, but at least you should have a vocabulary which can be used in a proper way with a proper structure of grammar. Because most of the time, what happens, a student of literature commits a mistake while writing thesis. So you should follow certain strategies. I'll give you certain study strategies so that it will be easy for you when you start writing dissertations. You can able to find it out that how I can write, how can I make all the things available. After the lockdown, I'm expecting that you should visit your department library or you should visit your university library, select several examples of types of thesis you intend to write. See the dissertation script in the library. Find it out how it is written. Read the titles. Even titles can able to make your idea clear that what sort of title I should carry in my dissertation. Because if the title is ambiguous, then you are not going to reach to any conclusion at the end of your dissertation. Even read the abstracts. If the abstract is given in the dissertation, read the abstract. And if the abstract is giving clear-cut summary of the thesis, then it will be supportive for you. Locate the aims of the thesis when you are searching for thesis. Simply what happens, most of the students enter into the library and get a thesis and simply turn over the pages and keep it back to the rack and say that, okay, I have seen that thesis. No. Locate the aims, how aims have been mentioned there. Because every scholar mentions aim in different way, in different style. That helps you to understand. And these are the activities, these are the exercises, my friend, you have to do in the first or second semester. Unfortunately, the first semester is under the lockdown. That's why it is not possible for you to see the things done. But even if you can put it on Google, you'll find out various dissertations appearing in front of you on internet also. Try to find out the titles. Try to find out the aims and objectives that have been mentioned there. Look at the content of the pages, overall structure of the thesis. This will help you to make how to make your thesis. This is what a framework of thesis you can have in front of your eyes, that this is how I have to make my thesis. This is how I have to prepare my thesis. This makes you to understand the thing very carefully. And that's why my request to most of you, my friends, I don't know how many students are regularly attending it. I find only 10, 12 students are regular on this app. Rest of the students, I don't know what they are doing. But when the time will come for submitting a dissertation, they will run once again to understand that, okay, what to do and how to do. So please follow this exercise comfortably so that at least you can understand the structure of the thesis. So I've talked to you about what exactly is the research dissertation, what exactly is the research thesis, what should come inside. Now let us move further and talk about the content that is expected in a thesis. I have talked about the framework. I have talked about the framework of research thesis. What exactly is roughly what thesis means by? What are the things that are expected? What is academic writing? Why academic writing is important? But when you are writing a thesis, you should have a question that, okay, uh, what exactly should be my content? I understood the skeleton of research thesis. Now I have to fill it up. so that I can give a particular shape to it. So what kind of content I should have in my research dissertation? First thing, please understand, you should properly distinguish between data and knowledge. Most we are not able to distinguish between these two things, data and knowledge. Because most of the time, the research scholar feels that whatever data he has collected, that data means the knowledge. No, please make it clear in your mind that new data does not arguably constituting a new knowledge. The data which you collect has to be analyzed, has to be interpreted. Your analysis and your interpretation may yield fresh insights and understanding, and these fresh insights and understanding can able to call as knowledge, new knowledge that you have added into. You need to analyze the data. I've said data may have various kinds of data. The text on which you are going to do your research is also a data. And there are different kinds of data that you are going to collect. There may be survey that you have a doubt in your mind, you have a question in your mind. Not essential that all the students should have a research on literature, research in literature only. Maybe some students will go for research in language. Try to find out how English is being taught in schools, in secondary school, in higher school, in colleges, in graduate courses, in commerce classes, in arts classes, in science classes. What kind of English is used, whether that English is comfortable to understand in a newspaper that is published in your town, in your city. We are making a survey of it and collecting that all data by survey. You prepare a questionnaire and you give that questionnaire to the common person who will tick it, whether whatever option he chooses to be correct for the question that you put there. And then collecting all those answers, you are reaching to one particular conclusion that 98 or 70% of readers of XYZ newspaper feels that the language in this paper is suitable. 30% says that this language is not good. You can make your own analysis of that particular thing. Why they are feeling good, why they are not feeling good. You can make this analysis by simply getting the questionnaire, by answering, by making a analysis of the answers that you received in that questionnaire. That is a kind of survey data. And this survey needs to be part of your dissertation. You have to put that survey. Based on that survey, you are trying to find out certain theories. The theories which we are going to talk about, prosody, the theory of different grammars. And then you are putting the things together. Then you are bringing all those things all together. And that is why it is essential, it is important in one way or another, my friends, that you need to understand what kind of data you are going to collect. Usually, this kind of survey data, during my tenure, I have seen that very few students try to go for this kind of research. But most of the students, they are interested in going for qualitative kind of research that I have discussed in the earlier lectures in last week. This qualitative data which you want to collect is you can have in large number, because qualitative data which you are trying to use, you're selecting one particular, for example, I'm giving this for example of first year students who are trying to enter into the area of research. This is not for the students of PhDs. If you want to go for a research, you have taken one text, particular text. Suppose I'll give one example. This is not essential. That I'm taking, for example, if I have taken a text called Othello, Shakespeare's drama Othello, or Hamlet. And now the question comes in your mind about reading, when you are reading Othello or when you are reading Hamlet, and you are finding out that whether the representation of villain in villain in Hamlet, if you are trying to search it out, whether there is a villain in Hamlet or not, or villain in Othello, who is supposed to be called as villain, and then you have to collect the data accordingly. That what villain means by, whether he is anti-hero, or is there any difference between anti-hero and villain. You are searching all those things minutely. How villain is mentioned in philosophy, how villain is mentioned in social life, how villain is mentioned in various ideas, and then you are trying to put it the argument that yes, these kinds of things make villain, and so Shakespeare's XYZ character carries these understandings, carries these things with himself. So we have to consider that these are the villains in Shakespeare's Othello, Shakespeare's Hamlet. Now, how you are going to do all those things? You are going to collect either data which is available in the form of texts that are available in library, secondary sources that I mentioned you earlier for giving evidences that what you are going to write it down. Or you are going to interview with some scholar in this area and taking the interview of that scholar. Now, you're not going to use the whole text as part of your thesis. You got a book by A.C. Bradley written, that Shakespearean Tragedies. That is a book written by A.C. Bradley. Now, when you are getting the book of Shakespearean Tragedies, what A.C. Bradley said about Shakespeare's villains. Now, you cannot write each and everything what A.C. Bradley wrote into that particular book, mentioning that this is my dissertation. No, it is a copy. You have to take support of what A.C. Bradley said. But when you are taking support of it, you have to choose which exact quote you want to mention in your dissertation so that it will help you to carry forward your argument. You cannot take all the text as it is in your dissertation. The text is of 300 pages. So you are taking almost all the 300 pages and saying that, sir, this is my dissertation for first year. No. You have made your argument, you have put your hypothesis, you have put your understanding that this is what the question that comes in your mind, and for answering that particular question you have chosen this particular supportive evidences, and when supporting evidences are given, you are not going to give each and every word of that evidences into it. You have to select the words, and that's why I said it requires reading. I'm saying that if you're doing it, if you're planning, not planning, you have to submit, my friends, dissertation in 4th semester. And when you're writing for 4th semester, if you start reading at the beginning of the 4th semester, then it will be difficult for you to write down a proper dissertation. You will write anything and you will get a very less grade for that, because you have not understood the whole idea of how to write down a dissertation. That's why we are insisting it right from the first semester, that this is how you have to mention all the things. This is how you have to bring all the things together. That means you need to require not only the primary text that you are trying to justify, you're trying to put argument, you're trying to create an argument, but you have to read the secondary sources. That means you have to read so many texts and marking out and pointing out and making a mark that this much part of this text is suitable for my argument. So I'm taking this much only into my dissertation, and while carrying this into your dissertation, you have to acknowledge it properly. How to acknowledge it, I will tell you later on when we come for a bibliography, when we come from the last part of it. Suppose that's why content of thesis is okay. Once you understand the skeleton of thesis, when you are entering into the content is little bit difficult. We are moving towards difficult things slowly, step by step. Now, if you want to write down, please understand it is what we used to say time and again into the classrooms. All the teachers of the department, they used to say time and again into the classrooms that if you want to write down one page, please understand this, even in examination also. If you want to write down one page, you have to read at least 20 to 25 pages to write down one page. If you read 20 to 25 pages, then and then it is possible for you to collect the things and to arrange the thing that will appear only on one page. And one page is approximately of 28 lines, A4 size page if you go technically. And usually a common person used to write down 9 to 10 words in a line, 8 to 9 words in a line. You say, sir, my handwriting is very thin, so I can write long many words. I'm saying commonly, usually, or my handwriting is big. You can use one word on one page and you can say I can write thousands of pages. It's of no use. Commonly, one line, 8 to 9 approximately words can appear on one line, 28 lines on A4 size page. That means you have to write down how many words you are writing on one page. You can calculate it, 28 by 7 or 8. I'm not good in mathematics. So that much words you are writing on one page. And that's why if somebody asks you in examination, write down, I don't know whether it is possible for you in this semester to write down examination, or you are going to solve this online examination. I don't know yet. But whenever you will write down, if the question is asked, write down answer in 800 words, you are not going to count each and every one. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. No, you are not able to count the words in the examination because there is a limited time. So you have to justify, you have to guess at the beginning that, okay, I'm going to write down 8, 9 words in one line, 28 lines. That means on one page, I usually write 100 words or 150 words, 160 words. So for writing 800 words, I require 4, 5, 6 pages. How many pages? The answer depends. It is not that you write big answer. No, the question is asked, you have to write down answer in 800 words, then you have to precise. And that's why precise writing is difficult. By giving limited number of words, that's why when you are writing a dissertation, you have to write dissertation in minimum 12,000 words, maximum 30,000 words. So you have to understand how many pages you have to write down. For writing this much pages, how much you have to read? I have given you an example with one page for 25 pages approximately. If someone is very sharp, he can write one page after reading 10 pages only. That depends on your intellectual capacity, your acquisition capacity of your mind. It varies, but common general student requires 20-25 pages to read. Then and then it is possible for you to write down one page. Otherwise, if you're copying it, then you don't have to read anything. That's another matter. That's another issue to talk about. That means you have to read so many things altogether to produce in your dissertation. And that's why I'm saying that it is difficult for you to read that much books only within that one semester. It is impossible, my friends. You have to study rest of the three papers also. You cannot concentrate only on one paper. The person who is doing PhD is concentrating only on one thing. That's why he can read so many texts during that particular period. You don't have that much time. So you have to start reading. You have to plan about what exactly you are going to write down in dissertation, what you are going to write down in research paper. That's why I said for practice, at the end of second semester, you have to submit 20 pages or 10 pages research article. In that, you can make your uh, plan. You can make your research, what sort of research dissertation you are going to submit at the end of fourth semester. You can make a mini skull or miniature of that particular thing and submit it to the teacher, so that you can, if you are making certain mistakes, it can be corrected, and then you can move for the fourth semester. So you require, when you are talking about the qualitative data you have collected, this data is in a large number, and you have to select what exactly, which part of that data is to be carried into the dissertation and which part is to be omitted. That is what you have to decide. That is what you have to understand, and it requires a precise methodological criteria for selecting some data, not because you like it, not because you feel it. No, there is no chance of feeling, there is no chance of I think, there is no chance of I expect. You cannot say this. You have to understand certain methodology, that which method I am going to use for selecting of that data that is going to be part of my dissertation. And I'll tell you, my friend, this never happens deliberately. In the back of your mind, you start this process by doing that. When you are reading the text, you think that, okay, this is good, this is suitable for my argument. And then when you are going ahead with the methodology that we are going to follow with support of those theories which are using, those theories will help us to search the data. And that's why when we are referring to the theories, we are not talking with the theory as a complete theory in itself. We are talking in an introductory framework, so that you can able to understand that whether that is suitable for your dissertation or not. Once you feel that this one theory is suitable for my dissertation, then you go for reading it in detail and then try to make it part of your dissertation. That is another thing to be done in further studies. If you're having an interview, the usual strategy is that we used to follow the exact verbatim that the person has narrated. We are taking your extract suitable for your argument in the thesis. Because there is usually a great deal of data available, there's often a natural tendency that you want to include everything into it. You feel that, okay, this is what I've done it very with a hard work. I did all those things, so I want to include all those things. But we have to remember, we have to understand that we cannot include all the things. What is essential is that the quotations, the analysis are combined into your dissertation as an integrated part of it. And again, here I'll say the styling matter requires how you write, what is your style of writing. It makes a lot of important part into it. You can make a sentences in such a way that they link with the analysis and the extract that you have taken. Now, there is an interesting addition to the process of analyzing the qualitative data which is to be included into thesis, a reflexive or reflective account. Now, this is essentially an attempt by the researcher to reflect upon their own intellectual background and perspective, which have provided the context for their analysis of the data. It is based on the researcher, as I said you earlier also. Friends, academic writers have often acknowledged the value and importance of making their own academic perspective very clear. If you take, for example, an author might write in the introduction of the book that this is written from the perspective of committed Marxist understanding, or I have written this book with open and public declaration that this book is based on my beliefs. You're making a declaration. And once the declaration is given there, then the reader is having this kind of framework in his mind and start reading all those things. So reflexive account to some extent serve the purpose in the thesis, that what is the purpose of your thesis, the aim which you are writing. And it is expected that while students do try to write their thesis in an unbiased and balanced manner with complete objectivity in research, as in life it is not easy to achieve, in the reflexive account the researcher tries to discuss the possibilities, the influence, the sort of support he has taken from the various kinds of texts. And that's why researchers' intellectual influences can be seen in the reflexive accounts that usually a researcher use in writing all those things. Then there's a conceptual analysis also. Now, in thesis, it may derive from the analysis of the concepts that used in the research. And those concepts may be described in the analytic data that you have collected. And that's why, as I said, in the early stages of dissertation, for example, it is often necessary, my friends, to try or to define the key concepts which are at the heart of the thesis. What are you going to talk about? The key concepts, you need to define it. And such definitions will rarely be complete and final, because those definitions are always changing according to the intellectual capacity and understanding of the data collected by the researcher. So you have to define your parameters that on which you are going to analyze the concept that is there. And that's why there are certain understanding that we need to follow when you are trying to use a kind of data in thesis. So encapsulating what I said about types of data in thesis, you can say, if I summarize this within a few points, that the arguments in a thesis may be based upon the analysis of empirical data or upon the analysis of the concepts. The empirical data may be qualitative or quantitative. What is qualitative, quantitative? I have said in the last lectures in last week. Quantitative data may be collected by such methods of questionnaires, of rating scales. You'll find out usually the rating scales asked by most of the app users: 5-star rating, 3-star rating, rating scales. Quantitative data may be collected by this way. Qualitative data may be collected by methods such as interviews, life history, discussion group, books, texts, using concepts. So these are the qualitative data. So these are the different data that you need to follow in your content of dissertation. We'll talk tomorrow about testing hypothesis, developing a theory, what is ontology, what is epistemology, and what is methodology. And then we are trying to point out some intellectual content of thesis, and then we'll move further for the next topic. I hope that I'm quite comfortable for you to make to understand the things. If you have any doubts and queries, please put it on that group. And if you want to watch once again, you can watch that lecture tomorrow on YouTube. I'm sending the links on the WhatsApp group. Please inform your friends to join the group as early as possible. I